Hello, welcome to welcome to my channel, and welcome to first part of my roughly 10,000 part Let's Play of the Final Fantasy series. Yes, I will be playing through all the main numbered Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy games. So, starting with number 1, Final Fantasy 1, or Final Fantasy. Released way back in 1987 on the Famicom in Japan, making the game almost as old as I am. Then released in North America on the original Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990. And it was somewhat successful, released by Square back then. It has obviously spawned a handful of sequels. The series is currently approaching 130 games in the franchise as a whole, depending on sort of how you count. So, yeah, just a few sequels, making the name increasingly ironic. Speaking of the name, there is a bit of an urban legend that the name Final Fantasy was chosen because Square was about to go bankrupt. Not actually true. It is true that Square was not doing great at that time. It had yet to have any game sell more than 100,000 copies, which is by the standards of the 1980s, yeah, they were definitely not doing great. But it's not like they were on the verge of bankruptcy or anything like that. The reason Final Fantasy was chosen is literally just because they wanted to have the name. They wanted to have the initials be FF, or Fu Fu, as it would be pronounced in Japan. Genuinely, that was the reason behind it. The original name was going to be Fighting Fantasy, but then it turned out that name was already in use. There was a tabletop RPG, I think, under the name Fighting Fantasy, so they couldn't use that. Thus, Final. Just that they could have that F in there. So the game was... now, one thing that is true is the game's main driving force, Hironobu Sakaguchi, who's the guy who came up with the story and was sort of the guy sort of in charge of the game, director or head developer. I don't think he had an official title for it, but these days he would be called the game's director, is what he would probably be called now. Lead developer, whatever you want to call him. Hironobu Sakaguchi did actually plan on retiring if this game failed. Obviously, he is still making games. So, and that said, so in that sense, Final sort of makes sense, but he is denied that factored into the name at all. As far as he's concerned, yeah, he said that it was just they needed an F name. The initial team was... Oh, actually, before I get to that. So, yeah, Sakaguchi had planned to retire. He wanted to go making a game that he wanted to make. He wanted to do an RPG. Square did not believe that RPGs would sell. So he'd been trying to get an RPG made for a few years, and Square kept saying no. Until Dragon Quest came out. Released by Enix. The second name, you see the name of that company there, Square Enix. Those two were rivals for a long time. Square's Final Fantasy series, Enix's Dragon Quest series. They had a friendly rivalry going for a long time. And they eventually merged. And like I said, Dragon Quest success did convince Square to give Sakaguchi a chance with an RPG, and it paid off. It sold great. And they have now made at least 20 versions of this original game. The one I'm specifically playing is the Pixel Remaster, and more specifically, the Steam version of the Pixel Remaster. On a side note, if you have the option, if you want to play this game, I would recommend getting the Nintendo Switch version of the Pixel Remaster, because it does have some extra features that the Steam version does not, unfortunately. So the initial team that worked on the game was pretty small. More people were brought in later on, but the initial team was Hironobu Sakaguchi, who came up with the story. Kenji Terada wrote it. Koichi Ishii and Akitoshi Kawazu were the main designers, and Nobuo Uematsu was the game's composer. And speaking of the composition, speaking of the music, the title screen music here. Very nice, right? They told him, they gave him less than half an hour to come up with the title screen music. Yeah, like they just came up to him and said, hey, we need title screen music, and oh, by the way, you've got about 30 minutes to come up with it. They just gave him no time to come up with title screen music, so he just fell back on arpeggios and came up with one of the most iconic pieces of video game music ever. This theme is constant throughout the franchise. Constantly repeated throughout the franchise. Sometimes it's just like sometimes very much just like this, sometimes just sort of woven in with larger music, but it is a very much recurring musical theme. And one last name that you see here on the title screen. Yoshitaka Amano. He came up with the logo. He did the character designs as well. So he was sort of the concept designer. Concept artist. There's actually kind of a funny story about how he got involved in the game. So initially, Koichi Ishii recommended Amano to Sakaguchi, and Sakaguchi refused because he'd never heard of Amano. And then later on, Sakaguchi was showing Ishii art from a magazine and saying, this is the style that I want. This is the style I want for the concept art. And Ishii pointed out, hey, that's Yoshitaka Amano. So it's the same guy that Ishii had already recommended. So before I click the button to get into more stuff, I've mentioned that there's almost 126 games in the franchise. At the time of recording, which is end of December 2023, the most recently released game in the franchise is Final Fantasy 16. The next game to be released is going to be Final Fantasy 7. Oh, which one is it? What's the title? Yes, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is the next game in the series that is scheduled, coming out at end of February of 2024. Sequel to Final Fantasy 7 Remake. So, Final Fantasy 16 came out just in 2023, late 2023. 7 Rebirth coming out early 2024. I will not be playing 11 or 14. Those ones are MMOs. They are multiplayer online games. Just very much not my thing. Not even sure if 11 is still even available, frankly. Not sure if it even can still be played. Looks like it can still be played. Okay, so yeah, 11 has not yet been shut down as of end of 2023. But I'm not playing the multiplayer games. So those two are out. But 1 through 10, 12, 13, 15, 16, and 7 Remake and Rebirth. And, depending on... This is going to be a very long project. So other games may come out in the meantime that will get added to that list. We'll see. I'm also only playing the main numbered games, so I will not be playing sequels or spin-offs. So, Final Fantasy IV After Years, or Final Fantasy X2, Final Fantasy X-2, Final Fantasies, the 2 sequels to Final Fantasy 13. Not going to be playing any of those. Even so, this is going to be an extremely long project because it is still currently 16 games that I will be playing. More may be coming out, and some of those games get really long. I'm also not going to be going for 100% runs of any of them, or at least most of them, especially the once it gets into the 7 onwards. Not going to be going for 100% runs. All right, and with all of that said, I don't need to be in there. The game is very heavily based on Dungeons and Dragons. Very heavily inspired. To the point where this bestiary, I have played a little bit of it, so you see that a fair bit of the, actually a fair bit of the bestiary I have filled out already. The original bestiary was lifted directly from the first edition, the Dungeons and Dragons first edition bestiary. Just lifted straight up. One enemy was renamed because they were pretty sure that they would get sued if they hadn't renamed that one enemy. It's honestly a miracle they didn't get sued regardless, because it was just copied directly from Wizards of the Coast. From Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of other stuff was inspired by Dungeons and Dragons as well. They were very heavily inspired by that game. Such as the classes. 6 classes. 5 of them do come from Dungeons and Dragons. So Warrior in the original game was called Fighter. In the original release was called Fighter. Later changed to Warrior. Can use a wide array of weapons and armor. They are tanks. They can hit hard and they can take a lot of damage. Thief nimbly runs circles around opponents. They can't actually steal. Later games would give the Thief class the ability to steal. They hadn't implemented that yet. The Thief class is fast. Early on, it's a pretty weak class. Doesn't have particularly high damage, and doesn't have really high defense. Later on, it becomes really powerful with really high damage. And again, it is very fast, which is useful. Monk, again, in the original release called Black Belt, specializes in bare-knuckled attacks. They're very limited in terms of equipment, but they can deal some really heavy damage. In the original release, it was actually possible to one-hit kill the boss, the final boss, using a monk. Or using a black belt. Later releases have changed things a little bit so that the monk can no longer just one-hit KO the very final boss, but yeah, they can deal really heavy damage in late game. Black Mage damages opponents with black magic. White Mage supports the party with white magic. White Mage is sort of based on the Cleric class from D&D, but they removed the armor component. They removed the heavy armor. So, mages are very fragile. Both White Mage and Black Mage are pretty fragile. They can't do much damage, and they don't take much damage. Where they shine is with their magic. White Mage will keep you alive, and has also other good spells. Black Mage can deal heavy damage. And actually has a couple of really one particular spell that's incredibly useful on as a party buff to make your allies more powerful. And last class, Red Mage, proficient in both black and white magic. This one does not come from Dungeons and Dragons. It's possible that this one may have been inspired by the Raceland Megere from Dragonlance. This class, early on, is really powerful. Really useful early on. They've got, decent attack, decent defense, decent white magic, decent black magic. They can do everything. They are a jack of all trades and master of none. Which means even by late game, they're still pretty useful. It's just they don't have the specialization the others have. So by late game, they're not doing the same amount of damage with physical attacks as these three. And they're not doing... They don't have the same spells as these two. They're still good. They're just not... They just don't have anything where they shine. As far as the party, basically choose who you want to choose. You can, your party makeup could be whatever works for you. There isn't really any bad choices here for the most part. Warrior is very useful to have because of early game, especially because they can just take all the damage. They can hit hard and they can take hits. Very early to have early on. White mages are generally useful just because they can keep you alive. So probably always worthwhile to have a warrior, and probably white mage. Probably the best second choice. For the other two, no wrong answers for the other two people in your party. Whoever you're comfortable with. I'm actually gonna stick with this party, with this lineup. As for the names, it's not like they ever get used. So you can go with whatever you want. The names will, I'm pretty sure, never actually show up on screen. I am going to go the 8-bit theater route. Fighter. Thief. White mage. Black mage. 8-bit theater, of course, used a red mage instead of a white mage. But going with those names. Oh, may as well mention here as well. Suggest names. Hubert, Rico, Robin. So, yeah, they do have names. And you saw Claire there, so... Most people read... The general read is that these five classes are generally read as being male. And white mage generally read as being female. But you can read them however you want. They're not giving any personality or anything like that, and they're not characters. They're basically for you to project onto. The idea was Akitoshi Kawazu came up with the idea of allowing players to choose the classes of their parties in order to give that RPG feeling of creating characters. So they are just blank canvases that you can project onto. All this said, we are 25 minutes in. So let us get into it. Pretty epic music here. The world lies shrouded in darkness. The winds die. The seas rage. The earth decays. But the people believe in a prophecy, patiently awaiting its fulfillment. When darkness veils the world, 4 warriors of light shall come. After a long journey, 4 young travelers did at last appear. And in the hand of each was clutched a crystal. All right. First things first. Much better. Just had to adjust the music. Now this is a good size for the mini-map. So, pretty epic overworld theme. First things first.
The king is searching for the prophesied warriors of light. Those crystals, could it be?
Whoops. I'll talk to that guy in a minute.
Those crystals! Those crystals! You must see the king at once! Welcome, travelers. I am told you carry crystals. Is this true?
Sure is. We got our shiny rocks.
It's just as Lucan's prophecy foretold. When darkness veils the world, 4 warriors of light shall come.
Your Majesty, we cannot be certain that these are the warriors foretold by the prophecy.
Yet they stand before us with the crystals. I cannot dismiss this as mere coincidence. Crystal bearers, there is a task I would ask of you. Will you rescue my daughter, Sarah?
Garland. Garland, a knight once in His Majesty's service, has abducted Princess Sarah. I ask for your aid in the name of His Majesty, the King of Cornelia. Garland has taken refuge in the Chaos Shrine, which lies to our north. Of course, we did attempt to save the princess ourselves, but Garland is the finest swordsman in the kingdom. We have none who can match him.
I have heard that you wish to journey to the continent to our north. The bridge leading north was lost long ago, making passage impossible. If you can rescue Sarah, I will have the bridge rebuilt as a token of my gratitude. Go now, warriors of light, and do not fail me.
Music still seems a little loud, honestly. The dancing girl in town knows many odd bits of information. If you find yourself astray, try talking to her. She may know something that can put you back on course.
The warriors of light have come at last. How long we have waited for this day to come. Garland is no longer the man I once knew. I beg of you, please return my daughter to me quickly.
No problem. Our reports say that Garland fled north with the princess to the Chaos Shrine. Don't worry, we'll get her back. We're heroes, it's what we do. Rescuing damsels is what we do, right?
Please, please save Lady Sarah.
Garland was once the greatest knight in the kingdom. The power consumed him, and he lost sight of who he really was.
Her Majesty's overcome with grief. She's shut herself inside her chambers. Please try not to upset her.
I am Jane, Queen of Cornelia. Please, please bring my daughter, my Sarah, back to me safely. My sister! I want my sister!
Oh, well, little girl's asked us for help now. How can we refuse that, right?
Our ancestors sealed weapons within this treasure room 400 years ago. They then gave the key to the Elf King to hold until the coming of the Warriors of Light.
This door has been secured with the Mystic Key. Sure would be nice to get those magic weapons now. Alright, next thing you want to do.
This is Cornelia, the city of dreams.
You can rest here to recover your health. Equipment, no. Items, no. Monsters, no. Actually, many types of monsters and different types have different weaknesses. Finding a monster's weakness will help you gain the upper hand in battle. For example, aquatic monsters are susceptible to lightning. Casting thunder on these monsters will deal particularly heavy damage. So that idea comes from, I believe, a game called Wizardry. As I said, the battle system was designed by Akitoshi Kawazu. He was heavily inspired by the games Wizardry and Ultima. And that's where Wizardry, I think, is where the elemental weaknesses came from. Next up. Hi there, I'm a dancer. What's that? You want to dance with me? Hee hee. Let's take a peek at your reflection in the water. Ugh, you're filthy. Use this to wash up. Funny. Nunchaku. These are only usable by monks. Early on, Nunchaku will increase the monk's attack power. Later on, they will actually decrease the monk's attack power. The monk will actually do more damage with their bare hands by late game. 2 rapiers and a hammer. Staff, useless. Knife, useless. Nunchaku, useless.
Restore the crystals to grace. Welcome!
Chainmail for the warrior. Leather armor for the thief. So, yeah. Attack up to 14, defense up to 15, so yeah, some pretty good boosts for... I'll explain more about stats in a bit.
Oh, please, you must rescue the princess.
The spell shop. Cure. You definitely want Cure. And you definitely want Dia. So restores a little HP to one ally. Deals damage to all undead enemies. Protect. Raise one ally's defense. Blink. Raise the caster's evasion. A lot of these things did have different names in the original. Don't really need to go into detail about what they were called in the original, though. Neither of these are bad. And I will have the money for it. I think I actually will go with Protect. Hell no, I'm not gonna bother. Thank you. Find anything to your liking? Fire! You definitely want fire. And you definitely want thunder. Fire damage to one enemy, lightning damage to one enemy. Lowers one enemy's evasion. Not bad. Puts all enemies to sleep. This one actually is really useful. So that one I'm gonna get.
Sage Lucan said something about finding the crescent moon. Then he just up and left town. The king truly believes in Lucan's prophecy, that the warriors of light will come to save the princess.
Please rescue Lady Sarah.
There are none in need of my services. Do not lose heart, brave warriors.
You can come here if any of your party dies. Have them resurrected. I once lived far to the east of here in the harbor city of Provoca. These days I hear it's turned into a pirate's den.
Welcome!
And yeah, a bunch of items. I'm not going to bother with any of them right now. We'll note, Phoenix Downs were not in the original game. They were added later on. They were sort of, back in because they're a regular part of the Final Fantasy franchise. So later releases of Final Fantasy added the Phoenix Downs in. Thanks. I didn't buy anything, so. Alright. Before I end this episode, let's do a couple fights just so I can show off the combat system. Goblins! Yeah, very quick and easy. Yeah, these groups of 3 goblins don't have to worry. 4 goblins. So I might get hit this time. Which will allow me to show off something. On a side note, I've got everyone going for different targets. Going back, once again, to the original release. If you had multiple characters target the same enemy, and that enemy died to one of their attacks before the other one got their attack in, anyone else targeting that enemy would lose their turn. So like if I had all 4 characters target this goblin, and then Fighter kills this goblin, everyone else would lose their turn. Subsequent releases, subsequent games, and recently this one, if an enemy dies, anyone else targeting them just retargets a different enemy. And went after Fighter. The order in which characters are placed does affect the likelihood of them being attacked. The character in the first position will be targeted most often. Character in the fourth position will be targeted least often. Generally. So it does mean that Fighter is the warrior class is the one you want in the first position. Because they are going to be hit the most, and they can take the most hits. So you want the person who can actually take the damage to be taking the damage. Ambushed! Means that they get a free attack in. The opposite of that is a preemptive strike, where you get a free round of attacks. And leveling up! Which means good time to talk about stats. So, Fighter, big boost HP, bit to strength. Thief, also nice boost HP, strength and luck. White Mage, more HP, and intellect. Black Mage, no HP, 1 point of HP, a little strength and a little intellect. Black Mage has the lowest HP gain in the game, I think. They gain HP really, really slowly. So, all those stats, all those numbers, let's talk about them. Strength, pretty obvious. How hard the character hits. Agility. Basically affects their speed. Pushes them up the attack order. Higher agility means they're more likely to attack quicker, attack first. Also, increases the chance of successfully fleeing an attack. Or not fleeing an attack, but fleeing a battle. Escaping a fight. Agility does get reduced by armor. Stamina. That was actually called Vitality in the original NES release. It reduces the amount of damage you take from attacks. Intellect. Or intellect, also called intelligence in a lot of versions. It affects how powerful spells are, both white and black spells. White and black magic. Once again, in the original release, intelligence was actually bugged. It just straight up did not work. It actually made the white mage completely useless. Or like just about completely useless. Because like their spells did not do any more healing compared to from level to level. It sort of worked out well for the red mage, because it meant that they were because red mages tend to have a little bit lower intelligence than white and black mages. Intelligence being bugged means that that didn't become a factor for them. Luck. That one is just sort of a. It just sort of affects everything. It just works with a bunch of other stats. One thing is that it does also improve your odds of successfully fleeing a battle. Truth is, a thief's high luck, they're actually pretty useful to, thief is actually useful having around, just so you can flee battles whenever you feel like. Because there will be times where it's like, oh man, I don't want to do this fight, I don't want to fight. There will be times where it's just so much easier to just run away. Rather than dealing with yet another random battle. Attack. That was called damage in the original NES. It factors in, how much damage you do. The specific formula is half your strength plus the weapon attack modifier, with the exception of black belts or monks, who get a bonus modifier if they're fighting barehanded. Otherwise, yeah, half your strength plus weapon attack modifier is how much damage you do. Defense, pretty obvious. That one was called Absorb in the NES version. Reduces the amount of damage. Both defense and endurance. Defense is specifically from non-magic attacks. Physical attacks. And is determined by your armor. And other equipment. Endurance or stamina Stamina goes up each level. Defense is determined solely by your evasion, called evade percent in the NES. Increases your odds of dodging an attack, specifically physical attacks. Magic can't be dodged. Evasion is reduced by armor. And finally, accuracy, which was called hit percent in the NES version. It affects two things. How likely you are to successfully hit an enemy, but also the maximum number of hits you the maximum number of attacks that you get each turn. So you may have noticed in the battles, let me get into another battle real quick, just so you can see. There we go. Hey, and a new enemy, Wolf. So you see 2 hits for him. 1 hit for him. That is because the thief has higher, significantly higher accuracy. 15% to the fighter's 10%. Then the mage is 4 and 5%. So, thief is useful because they do get high accuracy. They do tend to have higher accuracy. So they do tend to get more attacks compared to warriors. Which can occasionally mean that they are able to, early on, can sort of outdamage fighters at times. I think you saw the thief did more damage to that wolf than the fighter did. Despite all the stats, a lot of it is still there is still an element of randomness to everything. Same as with D&D. Like I said, very heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. So there's still quote unquote roles going on. And with all this done, this is a good place to end this episode. So, next time we will continue with the story and go beat up Garland and rescue Lady Sarah. Princess Sarah. I'll probably get a level or two before I do that. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.